This is week 7 of the winter trimester of 2018. This week, I had a very good week with developing my figure painting, which I guess I'll call my portrait painting since it's not the entire figure. So this is the second week that I've been working on my portrait painting, and the previous week, the first week that I was doing it, I was talking about how just getting the drawing and the structure of everything was a little bit shaky, and I had some issues with having to move the head down and up. But last Friday, I feel like I was getting things fairly better, and then this week, it's been kind of nicely very seamless from going from the drawing to starting to add color and value, which usually for me is not that way. It's like dry brushing and getting the initial drawing and that initial wash of just light shape, shadow shape is very good, and then when I start blocking in more colors and values, I kind of lose it. So I'm really happy with how this painting is going, and moving between the steps and moving forward has felt very natural and seamless, like I said. So I'm going to break down what I did this week. Okay, so this is what it looked like at the end of the first week. So you just have the shadow shape and light shape, and all I'm using is the shadow color to get the drawing. Monday, I look at the painting and I want to see how I can start bringing it closer to nature while doing this in the simplest way possible. So I still want to keep the lights very unified and the shadows very unified. Talking about the shadow shape, I'm talking about the background. Since the background's so dark, that is part of the shadow, and then also the shadow shape that's on the figure. Also, Brian's hair, I am counting this in the shadow shape, even though there are some parts like the top of his head, and there are some parts where light is hitting the beard as well. But squinting down, when I look at Brian, his skin is so bright and it really falls. The light shape is mostly the skin, and I would say that simplifying it as much as possible, then the hair I'm more counting as in the shadow shape. And so I start in the darks and work my way up to the lights. So I mix up a background color, which is this warm reddish color, and then I mix up a few different shadow colors that's going to be on Brian's, on Brian's body. And I've got some warmer shadow mixtures and cooler shadow mixtures. And then I also mix up some dark halftones just so I can be spreading that shadow shape out and diffusing the edge and having it lost and found, and just making sure it's blending out and transitioning out well into the light shape. So I'm making sure then that the whole shadow shape is as unified as I can make it, while also showing the variation where there is variation in value-wise or also color-wise. And then when I feel confident that the shadow shape is all looking nice, then I start moving from the shadow shape into the light shape. So still trying to, with the light shape, then make it as unified as possible, but also show variation where there is. And so when I look at Brian and I squint down and I kind of turn my head to the side, because for some reason turning your head to the side, I can see the big planes of color better. So doing this, squinting and looking at Brian, I see that there is a dark reddish light shape that gets his cheeks and his nose, and then a little bit lighter color that's also very pinky and reddish for his forehead, and then really simply his chest, arm, and hand. Those are the brightest areas. So I've kind of divided the light shape of Brian into 3. I have a tone here that's the darkest of the light shape, middle is the forehead, and then the brightest is the whole lower body with the shoulders, chest, arm, and hand. And so since I'm working from the darks into the lights, I first start with the section that's the cheeks and the nose, and then once I get that, then I move up to the forehead, and then I don't have time then to do anything with the lower body, so it's just focused more on the head today. So as I'm putting the light shape color in, and as I've been putting the whole shadow shape in, I'm dry brushing this all in, and I'm using just tiny bits of paint really on my brush, and using these colors for the shadow shape and the light shape. I'm just trying to get it closer to nature in the fact that, or in a way that it really helps me get the drawing and nail the drawing down more on Brian, because it does make a difference, since when you're starting to use value and color, the shapes that maybe you thought were really accurate will change a bit. So, well, for example, things that are lighter look bigger and things that are darker look smaller. So when you're pushing towards the key, and getting things to be more accurate value-wise, that's when I can see like, oh, I've relatively made the shape too big, so I'm going to bring it in, or vice versa. On Tuesday then, I work on the lower body since I didn't have time to get that, and that takes me pretty much the whole day. So what I'm using is like really ochre colors, because when I look at Brian, turn my head to the side, I see that his face is very, very reddish, pinkies, purples, all those, and then the chest is more ochres. So I just work on correcting the drawing with the chest, shoulders, arms, and hand, and still, though I'm working mostly on the light shape, I'm still have all the mixtures that I've mixed up previously. So if I need to like mess around with getting the shadow shape to diffuse more gradually, or correct the shadow shape into the light shape, I'm able to do that. Wednesday, I then go back to working on the portrait, still working on trying to move things closer to nature as far as the shadow shape and light shape, more focused on the head this day. And so as I mix up my mixtures and I start putting it on the painting, I can start to see then I need to be pushing things more redder or more grayer. So each time that I do another pass over an area with correcting the shapes, I'm also trying to correct the paint mixture, so I'm getting the value and the color and temperature more accurate as well. Thursday then, I focus on Brian's body then. That's kind of how this week has been going, where one day I'll focus on the head and the rest on the body, because I just don't have time yet to kind of do everything. Though I have to say, while I work on the body, if I do see something that I can easily fix or push forward, that's going to make a big impact on the face, I'll do that if I can do it. It's just most of my focus is on one part, either the head or the body. Now, this day I asked Brian to stay another session, and so for the pose, he's holding a pole, but for my specific painting, I have him holding this message carrier. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but I've been wanting him to hold a note or like a prophecy that he's going to be giving someone, like a message or something like that. But and so I was talking about that with Matt, and he pulled out this really cool carrier that you would put a message in. So that's what I'm going to have Brian holding in the painting. And so since I've been this day been working out more Brian's body and his arm, I wanted to have him actually holding that message holder so I could block that in, the message holder. And also the pole covers up his wrist, so I wanted to see, or start getting that a little bit more worked out with his wrist and the specific shadow from the message holder that would be falling on his arm rather than the pole. So I just blocked that in really quickly, and I talked to Brian about this because I can't have him holding this for the regular model sessions, because everyone else is drawing him with the pole. So I'm gonna just be asking him to stay late when we're playing it by ear for when I need to start to develop that more. But my game plan right now is that I want him to, or I want to get sessions where he's holding that so I can make sure that the colors of his skin are getting on the message holder, vice versa, so it looks really naturalistic and I get a sense of that. But I think what I'm going to do is later on I'm going to set up the message holder without him holding it, but work it more like a still life. And so Friday, I then go back up to working on Brian's head, and this day I'm really pushing to key the painting. So keying it meaning value-wise that I have my darkest darks in the painting, but I don't have my lightest light shown. So I want to start pushing the lights up so I can see the full range of values that I have to work with. And so when I'm doing this, since I'm trying to get the face to be brighter where it is, I'm also using the paint a little bit more thickly. Right up until this point, to this day, I've been using the paint really thinly, really dry brushing, not using any medium. So I feel like I have a lot of control over it. And now then that I'm using the paint a little bit more thickly and I get it to, it's actually putting down, when I put it down, you're actually seeing brush strokes rather than that kind of scratchy, fuzzy look that you can get with dry brushing. It's putting down more paint, so it's able to go on there a little bit more opaquely, so it's looking brighter. So it's been nice doing this really gradually. I've been dry brushing and now I'm starting to put on paint a little bit more thickly. Still, nothing is out of control at all. I feel like I can control it all very, very nicely. And since I've been slowly building the paint up on the canvas, I feel like I'm getting more confident with my actual mixtures that I'm mixing it up and they're looking how I want them to look on my palette, and then when I put it on the painting it looks how I want it to look. So it's been really good. I'm really excited about this painting. I like how I'm applying the paint, how I'm using it. I feel like I said at the beginning, everything's going pretty seamlessly and it feels natural with how I'm moving across the steps to develop this painting. So I'm just really excited to get in the studio next week and to keep pushing this painting on. And for my still life, I'm doing pretty much the same thing that I'm doing with my figure. I'm really just dry brushing everything in. I'm trying to really separate the light shape from the shadow shape, get those two things as unified as possible. I also start pushing the color as well where it needs to be, so I'm getting the pigment, the blue jar, trying to like push the color to get it as blue as I actually see it, and just slowly, gradually getting everything in. The one frustrating thing about this still life, I have to say, is that just because it's so complicated and there's so many objects in it, and I'm trying to paint it as well and accurately as I can and not rush through it so it looks sloppy, is that I'm not able to finish a step even in a full week, which is just a little bit frustrating, because it feels good when you get like a step down and then you can like move on from there rather than each day. It's just like I'll work a lot on one area and it'll be a fairly big area, but in comparison to the whole painting, it still feels like, I don't know, it feels still like I'm kind of like poking along with it. But I really just want to get everything blocked in value and color wise, because then I think it'll feel good. I'll be able to see everything clearly, so then when I start resolving certain areas, it'll make sense then when areas that I need to push further, or other areas where it'll be better just to have it less attention brought to those areas. And then extras for this week, I ended up finishing my portrait of Michael Moody. I'm really happy with how this turned out. And I also worked more on my portrait of Jasmine. So Tudor and I, we set up this life-size wooden model and dressed the model with the costume that Jasmine's wearing so I could work more on the hat. I don't know if she's coming in another time or not, so this portrait might be finished. And so what I've done with these portraits is use Stonehenge paper with charcoal and white chalk, which I haven't used charcoal on Stonehenge paper before, and I really like it. I can't get super dark with it because the paper doesn't have too much tooth in it for the charcoal to really get caught up in, but it's still really nice to work on. I really like it. And lastly, I wanted to share this painter, Corot, that I have refallen in love with. I'm just looking at his landscape paintings and how he paints figures in landscapes. They have a lot of Corots in the Art Institute in Chicago, and so I went there and I was just staring at them and taking notes. And I was thinking about these paintings earlier, and I decided that this was how I was going to develop my painting, how I feel like Corot maybe developed his painting, which is that dry brushing, and it's really helped my painting, and I like it a lot. And it feels so good to work that way, where I've got these really stiff bristle brushes and just using paint, no medium. So it's a way of putting the paint down where I feel like I have so much control over the edge, with lost and found edges, making it really specific, that I think it's really challenging when you're using a more thick brushstroke, which can look beautiful as well. But I guess it's hard for me, at least right now, to get a really specific changing edge through it that has a lot of variety in it. So dry brushing things, I don't know, I'm just so it just makes so much sense for me right now to do that. And looking at the Corrots in person in the museum in Chicago, it looks like he's dry brushed a lot of stuff, like where in his landscape paintings where a tree that's darker meets a really brightly lit sky, and it looks like they're padded, dry brushed into each other, and then where the value then becomes more confident, where it's not the transition between the two. It seems like he's used thicker paint then that flows a little bit better. And I like this for a lot of different reasons. One, like I said, it just it makes sense drawing wise and getting things figured out. But also I like then that it's just another way that you can stretch a range of variety in your painting with also how much paint you're putting down on the canvas. I like the look where you can see the texture of the canvas in some spots and maybe even the imprimatura. And then I like places where the paint's built up a lot more thickly. So it's just another way of getting variety for also for how you're applying the paint, but also how thick the paint is on the canvas.